And this is Sunday, the 19th of January, 2025. Martin Luther King Day Eve. That's the day we are recognizing tomorrow. Period. Y'all already know the drill. Views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of ONYXCON's affiliates, associates, sponsors, etc. ONYXCON is a 501c3 nonprofit arts and creative lifestyle organization founded in Atlanta, Georgia in 2009. In 2009, I founded Joseph R. Wheeler III. I founded ONYXCON. ONYXCON, all caps, one word, at the Southwest Arts Center in Atlanta, Georgia. But there would be no ONYXCON. And the inspiration for what became ONYXCON, which is not one thing, it was multiple movement. It was one movement, especially multiple movements, but one movement especially, the vision of one man especially, and the culmination of his efforts that charged others to do what he had done in their own way, that led to what became ONYXCON. In 1993, in Chicago, Illinois, a man by the name of Tertel ONLI, my brother forever, my Black Age uncle, created the Black Age of Comics convention at a community center in Hyde Park, Chicago, Illinois. Now, I don't know Chicago well. I have yet to go to Chicago. But I know many people from Chicago. I know many folks from Chicago. I know a lot of good people from Chicago. You know what I'm saying? And he was one of the great ones. Get my settings right real quick, y'all. Because I realized I needed to have my settings right. Because today, for what I'm talking about, especially, there's absolutely no room for disrespect. And hi to who was just saying hi. I know you didn't mean no harm, but you reminded me I didn't have my settings on, because I don't just let everybody talk. You got to be a subscriber to really chat it up. I only allow subscribers to talk. And I wish I didn't have to be that way, but I gotta be, because way too many times have I went live and seen what other YouTubers mean, or what they go through when they say, you know, it can be crazy out there with the trolls. And I say, well, that's just because y'all don't use troll control. It's called block. It's called you can't speak. It's called you're irrelevant. It's called you don't exist. So I'm only talking to people who exist and who are respectful, period, in life. And especially right now, because what I'm talking about today is that we've lost an ancestor. We've lost a great one. I don't even want to say he lost. I'll just say he has transitioned, and we are gaining extra reflection and perspective on what he shared in his lifetime. Because that's what happens when people transition. You get to really realize how much more they did that you didn't know they did, because everybody who knew them comes out and shares what they knew about the person and what they remembered about them that made them great, and what led to them deserving the legacy, because they were living in their purpose, which is the only purpose of life, is to find your purpose, live in your purposes, leave a legacy. That's the formula, period. And yeah, we're gonna talk about ONLI today. I'm gonna talk about my friend. I'm gonna talk about, like I say, somebody who was like an uncle to me, and for what he did and what he created with his movement of the Black Age. I'm gonna break all that down for those who don't understand what that is, why it is something to be aware of, and why we're going to continue to hold the torch for years to come. There will be interruptions because, as I always say when I do these lives, I'm typically working. Today's no different. So I'll be right back, and we're going to keep it going. And if you want to wait till it's all said and done and watch it later, fine. As long as you do, I appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. As I was saying, so Churchill ONLI, in many titles, but one that is so revered in the community I'm a part of, was known as, and is, and forever will be known as, the father of the Black Age, or the Black Age of comics, specific of that part of the genre, because it's far more than just comic books, but it is everything related to the development of comic books. And he made his transition in the last couple of days. I only found out last night. Good friend of ONYXCON sent me a message and a DM on Instagram, and I was up late, and I was just like, I know I'm not seeing what you're saying right now. Like, nah. I'm not even sure how old he was. And most of the posts, the memoir posts I've seen, no one has mentioned his exact age or, cause of death and all of that. So, but everybody has respectfully shared his art, and he is a true artist. You know what I'm saying? So for all of us who are real artists, who live this real art life, it's well understood when one of us goes, that's the first thing we share. Of course we share pictures of the person because we in ourselves are a work of art, universe blessed. You feel me? But we also share pieces of the work that they did in various forms. And he was a multi-disciplined artist. He was also a educator. He taught art, and he was an athlete. He played basketball and he taught basketball. He was a coach for basketball, girls basketball, in multiple schools, or I know at least one, if not multiple schools in Chicago. And he was revered and respected. People in his community loved him and knew him well, and knew that he was about positivity, about progression, about the upliftment of his community on a real level, not just saying words and, because there's plenty of people out here that just say words and don't really mean what they are saying, and have no examples of how they represent what they say they about. No, he was the truth. Every bit of him. Everything he said he was about. And he was always true and fun. He had a great energy about him. A very cool dude, like that cool dude, straight up. Like the epitome of cool uncle, which I relate to myself. And when we first met, we instantly clicked. Like it was, grown but young nephew meets uncle energy, you know what I'm saying? And it was just that kind of vibe. I first met him in Philadelphia at an event that was completely directly, in many ways, inspired by his goals and efforts as a creative when he started what he started in Chicago in 1993. I say again, he did the absolute first in the United States, and quite frankly, the world, because there's no documentation I can find anywhere of any public access. I ain't talking about somebody just meeting up in groups, talking about Black folks making comic books, creating their own stories and heroes and characters and worlds. I'm talking about a literal event open to the public, okay, that was a Comic-Con, a mini Comic-Con. It was a small event, but it was nonetheless a Comic-Con at an art center in Chicago, Illinois in 1993, the first ever. That's very important. That is so important. But I'm gonna get back to talking about Philadelphia. Shout out to Yumi Odom, the founder of the East Coast Black Age of Comics Convention. You see that connection? the East Coast Black Age of Comics Convention. The original one that ONLI created was the Black Age of Comics Convention in Chicago. But the reason that even came about is that as far back as the 1940s, the actual true first black comic book was All Negro Comics #1 by Orrin C. Evans. Orrin Cromwell Evans, know the name. Philadelphia, stand up again. All right. He's as we say in the Black Age, he's like the father of black comics, period. Orrin C. Evans. And he was blocked by all the expected issues of his time with racism. After the first issue, he couldn't find anybody to allow him a printing press option. He didn't have anybody who would even supply him newsprint to get it printed. He was trying to do a second issue. Just shut him down. Jackie Orms, we consider the queen of the Black Age. She was the first ever black cartoonist, illustrator, and writer of her own stories that were published, syndicated in black newspapers. Okay, all right. That's Jackie. What? Jackie. I said. I'm sorry, stumbling over my words a little bit here. Jackie Orms is the name. And the other name was Orrin C. Evans. But from the 1940s into the 50s, into the 60s, into the 70s, there had been other characters, mostly black characters that were either sidekicks. There was I hate to say it on the moment, I'm forgetting the name of, there was a Western comic book that Dale Comics, I think it was, put out, maybe in the 50s, and that was about a black cowboy character. Written and published by whites about a black character, so it was great. It was a great liberal effort of its time. I mean, unheard of, quite frankly, and that is commendable. And then there were other examples of that type of behavior, by people who were advocates of the communities, of black folks having our rights and civil rights and wanting to see true liberal efforts, true diversity, true support for everybody having their own voice and opportunity to be seen. Even when, they weren't necessarily working, they weren't necessarily of the culture, but they respected the cultures. And let me always put that S on there, because we say here, not for the culture, we say for the cultures. We recognize the individualism and the barriers that naturally happen. But anyway, by the time in the 70s when ONLI was coming up, and he was an illustrator, a graphic designer, someone who had been published and had jobs, got gig work as an illustrator for the likes of Ebony Magazine, Playboy Magazine, Heavy Metal, I believe he did some work for. He worked for a lot of different major, and I do mean major, publications. And at one time in his life, that was his bread and butter. He was a working artist in that regard. And so, and I'm not looking at any cliff notes. I'm doing this all off of memory of who I know him to be, right? But I will do something more formal. Like I said, I'm going to do or if I haven't said, I'm saying it now, I'm going to do something to be a memorial, edited presentation about him and his life and how we connected directly through ONYXCON. I want to celebrate that. I want it to be an official ONYXCON presentation that I'm going to do, and I'm going to share here forever and ever. It'll be here on YouTube for the world to absorb and appreciate and support the memory of our brother Tertel ONLI. But another thing was, I was going to say, in the late 70s, he started development of a character, Nog, Nubian of Greatness. And he had spent time in France. A lot of time he did some residencies as an artist in France. And because of his time in Paris, he was in Paris and all of that, he called it Nubian of Greatness, protector of the Pyramides, the way it was spelled. It was Pyramides, which is the way the French spell it. And that was kind of an homage to his travels and his experiences as a, as a global, worldly artist. Again, the things we have in common, and the love I have for this brother and his life and his example of how to live a life. That being adventurous, being active. I mean, you're talking about somebody who was you talk about the whole ONYXCON lifestyle I talk about. This man embodied it. Embodied it. He was physically fit at all times. I never saw ONLI looking sloppy and disheveled or any of that. He always well-groomed, clean and sharp. He might be funky with it in a way that it ain't gonna work for everybody's, palette of how they want to put colors together and everything. But he was unique. You know what I'm saying? That's that artist. That's what we all do. I do the same thing. I put together stuff sometimes. I'm sure some people's like, oh, what is that? That ain't my style. I don't care. It's us. It's who we want to share ourselves to be to the world. That's what we do. We artists. We get up and get dressed for our damn self. You know what I'm saying? We come out fly and we don't care who else don't think it's fly. We know we fly. ONLI was always fly. You know what I'm saying? And so he had a character, the Nubian of greatness, Nog, which I love that character. And this character, he had he published it in a series of Sunday Funny style in a black publication. I forget the name of the exact publication, but it was a black newspaper, I think in Chicago. And that had a nice run, but he eventually took all of that and put it into a comic book format and created a whole full book. And this was a space traveling, cosmic based character, who had electric style energy and sun energy, Ra, okay? The sun god, Egypt, okay? So it was a lot of Egypt in it, Kemet to be exact, if you want to say what we know from those who have studied Egypt all their life. They say that the real name for Egypt was Kemet. He had Kemetic energy throughout all of his projects, but especially Nog, I would say. And this was a hero. This was a guardian, a cosmic guardian sent to Earth to protect those who knew the truth, so to speak. Okay? Folks speak of woke. Like I say, there's true woke and there's forever woke. And then there's people playing with the word woke. Stop playing with it. Stop making it something it was never meant to be. Don't make it all this mess in politics with people trying to take something and turn people against each other and create all kind of nonsense because of racism and biases and all that. That ain't got a damn thing to do with what woke started out to be and what it's supposed to really represent. So before all of that was conversation, this was an example of something that was pure. Just pure. You feel? Real artistry at its best. And so we salute that. Now, I don't know the order of these next few characters I'm going to mention after Nog. I do know Nog was his first major character that he published. But then he had two other characters that, in a way, create ONLI's and ONLI Studios, because that was his company for his comic books and related, not just the comics, just all of his art presentations. He had a studio he called ONLI Studios, and it was a real, wherever he resided, he had a live work space. And in some cases, many cases in his life, he had residencies as an artist, so he also had extra studio space in environments throughout Chicago. Okay, but he had two other characters that create the pantheon, I call it, of ONLI, and that was Sister Girl, just like we say in the cultures, all right. And I wholeheartedly say that when I say for the cultures, because everybody don't say it the same way. Even some people might say sister, some people might say sister, some people might say, oh, sister, still saying it with some flavor, but gonna put the ER even. But most folk gonna still say generally sister or sister, so he had Sister Girl, which was a black woman superhero. And the best way I could describe her energy and power would be like a Wonder Woman, but on her own tip. Wasn't nothing about it, trying to be what DC had already put out. It was original. Yes, y'all. Yes, y'all. So yeah, he had Sister Girl, who was a super strong black woman. Typically, her hair was in braids, like the way sisters will get the box braids, the extension braids, real long braids. I tell you who could play Sister Girl right now. If there were a movie, which I would love to produce, if I was already where I should be, and that's a whole nother conversation, but as a creative, if I were already a millionaire and with all my experience in the film biz and had my own studio or studio access or whatever, all the parts and pieces of what make a film on a major production level, I'm talking millions of dollars to do, give me a few $100 million, because we gonna make 500 million or more, okay? You give me Bianca from the WWE. That's Sister Girl right there. Like, the way she comes out with her braid extension, the big long braid, and she be twirling it and everything, and she's pretty, she's sexy, but she's strong as hell. You know what I mean? Yeah. And my other girl, who I hate to say, I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but they often partner up in bouts. The taller one originally from AEW wrestling, but she's now at WWE. Y'all know who I'm talking about. I can't believe my names right now. Y'all know who I'm talking about. If you're a wrestling fan, you know who I'm talking about. Either one of them could play Sister Girl, but I would give it first to Bianca. I think Bianca would absolutely kill that role. And any actor, anybody who is an actor knows, wrestlers, they are athletic actors for all the story element they have to do and staying in character and doing all those incredible stunt level moves. I mean, it's stunts. It's stunts, it's athleticism, and it's theatrics at the same damn time. She got the full package. I'm telling you, she could kill that role. She would absolutely kill that role. She would be excellent. So Bianca, that's my girl for that. If you need a picture of what Sister Girl should be, that's it. I need to do a post about that too. That would be awesome. And then he had another character that was an homage to Malcolm X, El Haj Malik Shabazz, which is Malcolm X. And there's so many actors who've played Malcolm X in the past that I could imagine playing that character. What ONLI did with him visually was amazing, because in the way that only us who are, funky-minded and come from that funk tradition, and I mean, let me mention this too, he also did covers. I'm talking about actual physical album covers that are historic for Parliament Funkadelic. And unfortunately doesn't get a lot of the credit he deserves for that, because the artists themselves who were involved know he was a part of that. Overton Lloyd, the legend, the absolute legend, Overton Lloyd, okay, who is probably one of the most well-known artists to have been featured, his work on Parliament covers and some of the cartoons that went along with the albums and everything. When you open up the albums in the 70s, they had in the 80s and 70s, they had those albums that had cartoons, and you had like the big bird that would make the song, all of that, and you had Sir Nose, what I'm saying, devoid of funk with the long nose, and all of that stuff. How all of that looked and everything was because of artists like Overton Lloyd, Turtel ONLI, and I'm forgetting another name off the top of my head. Hold on, it's coming back to me. Is it Peblo? Yeah, Peblo Bell, I believe. Yeah, Peblo. Yeah, hold on, I got Pedro. Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm so glad I went and checked, y'all. I'm so glad I went and checked. I had to get that name right. Pedro. I don't know why my mind was saying Peblo. It's just, words are in your head. I knew it was in the P file. I remember the name Bell. Pedro Bell, who deserves first credit for all the Parliament. He did the majority of the covers and everything. But ONLI was a good friend of his and helped out on some of those covers, drawing certain elements and things of that nature too. As is true with Overton Lloyd being an absolute legend in regards to all of this. And then I'm sure there's other artists I'm not mentioning, but I know that the ones I am mentioning are some of the top people that deserve, major credit. So add that to your notes. Something to know. All right, y'all. So yeah, as I was saying, so Pedro Bell, ONLI, and others were all involved. Yeah. So no, he had he's got a long history, y'all. Long history of great artwork, amazing people that were friends, and people here he collaborated with. And like I said, he was renowned for his career in Chicago and abroad. So when he started the first ever Black Asia Comics Convention, that was a result of seeing a trend that started to happen where Black creators were starting. So there was a time in publishing for comic books where you had what they call the zines that came out. A zine was a magazine, but it was an independent, low-budget production of a magazine. Typically all black and white. Typically, sometimes the whole thing was printed on newsprint from cover to the interior, all the same grade of paper. Like the cover wasn't heavier than the interior. The same format was often used for what was called an ash can, which meant it was like a demo in the music business, except it was for the comic book business. You give somebody your ash can, and it was your first, your 0.0 issue to say, this is my proof of concept. This is what I want to do. And if people bought enough of that, you may have had enough money to print a first issue. And if you went through some of these small budget presses that existed at the time and still do, but there was a lot of different, ways about that because cost have changed, cost of materials has changed, process with technology has changed. But at that, you could do, meant you were printing with other printers on a run with somebody else's comic book to make your project more affordable. You wanted 100 copies of yours, they want 100 copies of theirs, somebody else want 100 copies of theirs. They print all of y'all books at the same time using the same types of ink, the same, y'all all needed the same type of color. You're saying you both gonna do black and white, you both gonna do a certain weight of cover, a certain weight of interior. And it got to a point where you could, afford to generally do a color cover, but with black and white interior. That was kind of the standard for a lot of these first independent books. And so Turtel had done zines. He had a zine that he produced that was called Future Funk. Shout out to Future Funk, baby. And Future Funk was one of his ways of exposing not only his own art, but other artists. I'll say that again. Exposing not only his own art, but other artists. See, that's the kind of mentality that unfortunately some people still understand, but so few are. It's becoming a rarity that people consider the team, consider a group, consider, but it still exists. You wouldn't have Kendrick Lamar, you wouldn't have TDE, you wouldn't have major labels, independent labels like that if it weren't people who didn't get what I'm talking about right now. Where you build up whoever the different best talents on the team are, because if they win, we all win. We get more money for the team, now we can all put out our album. That was the culture. And another thing to add to why ONLI had that state of mind and that consciousness is he came out of the Black arts movement, which was tied in with the Black civil rights movements, Black liberation movements, Pan-African movements. And it's not to say that all of that was always or has always or is always for the betterment, because there's a lot of there's a lot of lunacy and craziness and weirdness in every time you get a group together, because everybody there ain't. This is why I always say for the cultures, plural. Because as soon as we go pretending that there's one of anything, oh, that just left the door open for the deceiver to come in and be like, oh, so what's the secret chant? What's the little phrase we all do? What's the cultural dance we all do? Okay, do enough of that and y'all suddenly trust me, and then I can do anything else I want to do. You know what I mean? Then you let the fools in. But when you start off with, you know what? We are first and foremost always, forever and a day individuals. So as we come together as a group, we hope that as we lay down the bylaws and laws of what we say represent us and what we're about, that everybody's cool with that here. Knowing that people are going to have to adjust themselves, because nobody typically is going to just align themselves with, you know, 5 people can align themselves with one agenda, and 6th or 7th or 8th person comes along, more than likely, people in that group are not going to really be agreeing with the original doctrine and everything, and they just there to get all the resources they can to turn on the group and create their own groups and all that kind of stuff. And that's usually what happens. So I just got to mention that, because, you know, me and my good friend ONLI, we had conversations about that. You know, I give that respect always. Like I said, the relationship was like nephew and uncle. So I have the utmost respect for whatever he always shared with me about what you're going to go through during a Comic-Con. Add on top of that, a Black Comic-Con, you know, because, I mean, the doors are open to everybody, but we're dealing with Black culture. We're dealing with mostly Black people. And we got a lot of traumas that we got to work out. We got a lot of mental issues with people sometimes, like anybody does. All people do. All people do. But when you start dealing with a majority of anybody, you're going to deal with the majority of all the problems that come with them too. And so we would have those conversations. We would laugh about it. We would give each other advice. And we would learn. I learned so much about that process, you know, and about what to expect and not get caught up is the key thing. You know, to know better than to get caught up in what was obviously going to be problems down the road. You know, we shared that. We shared that. Thank you. I see the love going up. I see smiles or something going up, and I feel you. Thank you. So no, we did our thing with that. And ONLI was very, very wise from all those years of being in those different movements. And he had seen a lot of come, seen a lot of go. So by the time he decided he was going to do a Black Comic-Con, and he knew, this is the thing, but this man was prophetic. He's a prophet, y'all. You'll hear me say is. I'm not going to always speak in past tense. I speak in past tense of things he did, but not because I ever, when someone passes, you're forever. You know what I'm saying? Your energy's forever. Especially those who we admire and we know their energy lingers and what they contribute to the world of humanity. It lingers. It's forever. So I'm gonna still say is most of the time. You know, I just want to make that clear as I'm going. But Tertel ONLI was one that, you know, he foresaw everything that is now happening in Marvel Comics, in DC Comics, Image, all the other independents, the major ones, all the Black imprints that are owned by us and controlled by us. He had the full vision of what was going to happen and the order in which it was going to happen. We're talking about a man who, I never forget, at my event, my first ONYXCON in 2009 at Southwest Arts Center, we did a series of interviews. I conducted some, and most were conducted by my good friend, Bruno Gaston. If you are in Atlanta, or if you ever been to Atlanta, or if you ever listened to, because you can listen to it anywhere in the world, WRFG.org, WRFG.org, okay? They have he's no longer on the shows regularly, but one time he was a producer and a voice personality on many of the shows. But Bruno Gaston, you'll still hear his voice. He'll do the mission statement that you'll hear on the station. It's like, you're listening to WRFG 89.3 FM, Atlanta. Community-based radio. Blah, blah, blah. That voice, that's Bruno. And that's his natural voice. He don't have to dig into nothing and be like, let me get it out. Let me get hurt. No, that's him. That's just him. That's Bruno. Shout out Bruno. And Bruno went around the entire event and he interviewed everybody, all my guests, everybody who was behind the table as a vendor. And Tertel, it came all the way from Chicago to be a part of that. He was like, I'm not going to miss it for the world. I got to be there because what you're doing is the dream come true. Brother Joseph, this is what he told me, you know, in so many words. He's like, this is so important because what you're doing, Atlanta is our Black Mecca. It's one of those towns. I mean, of course, Chicago is where he was from. DC, they called it Chocolate City back in the 70s. You know, Detroit, all these different towns where there's a mass majority of noticeable population. But he made it very clear, Atlanta is that place now, and what you're doing is so important because it's completing a vision he had. And he broke it down. I got all of this on video. Like I said, I plan to put a memorial video out, and I'm gonna use clips from that and other things and really celebrate this gentleman, you know. But he said about the future of how film and all of that and the major mainstream market and everything would in ways take away some of the interest on the independent black comic book creators, that it could be a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, because what often happens is whenever they come out with something, they got all the money to put it in front of you, and then suddenly, and this is exactly what happened. Not that I didn't know it wasn't, but to watch it literally like verbatim manifest when, you know, as much as I love and I will always cherish and honor the memory of Chadwick Boseman, the essence of Black Panther, the first movie, the second movie, which I was in both of them. I'm in the business, so I love these movies. I'm not, what I'm about to say, I want to make it very clear. There ain't no hate of whatever we're doing to have our representation, to have our voice. It's not about that. But it is something to acknowledge that what happens when the mainstream finally decides, oh, we want to make some money off of that market, it tends to turn, it's what happened with Jackie Robinson. And I think he gave that comparison, if I remember right in that interview. But it's like what happened with Jackie Robinson and the Negro Leagues. The Negro Leagues were created primarily by two black investors who had the goal of having their own teams, which they did. Now, there were other people who had teams similar, and they played, you know, and I'm talking about, when I say other people, I'm saying like even as far as like Cuba, they went to Cuba, they went to other countries in the Caribbean, they played against players and teams there with the Negro Leagues. They did international games and all that, and they did the games that they did here in America. And they were gaining, when you start doing anything international, people are gonna wake up and realize, wait a minute now, they really are something serious. People are loving them outside the country. They got a voice, they got an impact, they're having an influence, and people are loving them. They are heroizing these athletes that are phenomenal. And over here in the States, with all the racism, with the quote unquote major leagues, they weren't trying to have no black players until Jackie Robinson. And he was the experiment. You know, that's no shun to him. None of this is no pun or shun to him. It's just the facts of how others involved looked at it. It's like, oh, this is the experiment. Let's see if this will work. And if you know Jackie's story, you know the hell he went through to prove himself and be the legend he forever shall be and is deserves to be. Okay, with the Brooklyn Dodgers. But the same way that played out is kind of what happened after and during the hype of Black Panther. That same year, and it's a project I'm very proud, extremely proud to have been a part of. And I don't want to see any of this go. Because see, here's the other thing ONLI said. None of the mainstream or independent, he said, he had a phrase, he said, let me see, let me make sure I say it right. I think it went mainstream today, indie forever, the black age of comics. And what that meant was, yeah, any and every day you're gonna notice the mainstream because of the money and the influence and all of what's behind it. The capital behind it will keep you forever knowing who Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Storm, okay, Black Panther, etc. You're gonna know those characters because they're mainstream characters. So yes, they have their day every day almost because of that. But indie forever. What that truly means is the independent, is the spirit of independence is what gave birth to Marvel. If you look at the history of Marvel Comics, DC Comics, any of the Image especially, oh my gosh, Image is like the picture perfect example. Because Todd McFarlane and other artists who were legends at Marvel that felt underpaid and underrespected for their talents broke off and started Image Comics. And we all know what Spawn was and is. One of the highest grossing independently produced by a company that started with an independent vision. Yes, it became, I think they still are, I'm not sure, but I think they still are like the third, if they're not the third, the fourth largest comic book company in America next, because I know there's Dark Horse to be considered too, but I think Image is still three. I forget. So, you know, the spirit of independence is the birth of everything. It always has been. Everything that becomes something big started independent. It was always an answer to something that was already big, or got so big that it didn't recognize everybody, that it didn't have diversity, that somebody, for whatever reason, from whichever of the cultures, felt excluded, felt overlooked, felt misrepresented. Like, oh, you represented, but wait a minute, whoa, what's up with these coon characters and black folk colored gray, and we got one shade of brown? I mean, I know that was early printing. They didn't have certain colors, but why y'all can always get the colors right with or general pinkish cream tone for everybody Caucasian, but everybody else just, we all gray and one shade of brown, and if you're lucky to get that, and or just jet black, which is not even, nobody's skin is literally jet black. Again, race is a construct. You know, so we went through all of that. What was a golden and silver age to some was hell for most of us on paper, was some of the silliest ish you ever want to read for most of us for representation. So by the time people finally get fed up enough to have their own, start creating their own, like all Negro comics, back to that, you had opposition because they didn't want to see you have no pride. It was all about keeping you in a certain place. But as things changed, throughout various stages of the civil rights movement, it never died. It still exists. It's still needed. Obviously, with what's happening right now. Oh my gosh! But I'm gonna stay on this. This retro tip for a minute here, and make my points. So independence is always the lane for the development of the new. It's how it all happens. And when people finally take the veil off, wake up, and realize how beautiful it all is, either of two things tends to happen historically. Sometimes people are ready for it and they embrace it wholeheartedly. Luckily, I came along with ONYXCON at a time in a city where I was born and raised, that was the perfect time to do ONYXCON. And when ONLI did what he did back in 1993, when I didn't even know who he was or what he was doing. I didn't know anybody in Chicago in 1993, other than maybe somebody in my family that I didn't really know well, or my parents knew some people, and I don't. But to find out that all this was in existence was phenomenal. It was phenomenal, y'all. It's phenomenal because it made me realize that, yo, there's always people working, and there's always collective consciousness for the goals you might have. You feel like you're alone a lot of times in life. Like, is anybody else thinking about what I'm thinking about and wants to see this positive, progressive change? Something that will truly give diversity, something that will truly make everybody feel represented. And whatever that is, whatever lane that is that you represent, it's needed. It's needed. And you can't wait on other people who had their vision to completely see your vision and completely give you representation. Which is what I'm always saying all the time and time again, just to quickly reference, like when people got upset. I mean, now they seem happy, but I think they're going to be upset again when they talk about Black Panther and the recasting of T'Challa, the character. And I said from the beginning of it, I said, well, a decision was made by Ryan Coogler, the director, and the producer, Nate Moore, two black men who gave you the first film that you fell in love with. But all of a sudden, you got some fans that want to talk about both of them like they are ne'er-do-wells and what is this mess? Because they didn't like the second film for various reasons, especially a lot of these men with their, at the end of the day, they just sexist. They don't like seeing images of strong black women or any woman. They don't want to see a woman doing anything in a position of power. It's all a metaphor. It's all symbolic. No one's literally saying that a woman is, that most women are strong. I mean, there's some, but most women are stronger than men, and they're gonna just start slapping us around. And but what? That is not what this is about. That's not what this is about, man. It's from a superhero concept. It's a comic book concept. It's a fictional fun if you'll let it be. I still even had problems with the plot in Wakanda Forever. Yes, I've said this. I went on record. I said I didn't like the fact that Namor's nation went to war with Wakanda in the first place. I didn't like that at all. But that became the premise of the movie. At the point of it being what it is, I'm sitting there like anybody, like, okay, if I'm gonna finish watching this, I gotta accept it for what it is. I didn't write this. I didn't produce this. Yes, I'm even in it. I didn't know when I did the scene I was in, which was on the Boston Bridge at the crime scene with the FBI. I played an FBI agent walking on the bridge. I showed up for a hot second. I knew it was me. I was proud of my moment on set, my day on set. It was a good time as always whenever I've done Marvel stuff. And I've been in almost every Marvel film ever since the first, let me see, I want to say the first time I ever did a Marvel film was was it Spider-Man or was it Captain America? I can't remember. Y'all been on so many. If it was in Atlanta, Georgia, I was in it. Including the first Venom film. Didn't show up like I thought I would, but I was in it. I was in one of the scenes when him and his girlfriend character were in there on their date at a restaurant. I was there. I was in that scene. But no, I've done a lot. I've even done Marvel shows. I was on the New Mutant show, that one New Mutant show. I did that a couple of times. That was a fun show to be on too. But anyway, my point of all that is to say, until you own the IP, until you have some collective interest in the IP, maybe you don't own it, but you've been hired to do, like I said, I'd love to do a movie about ONLI's characters. His three main characters. They deserve to be in a movie dedicated to him. That needs to happen. Folks are always looking for great concepts. This is one that has a rich history that goes all the way back to the 70s. A lot of times, you know, there's so much folk trying to reinvent the wheel, trying to come up with something, some of the work done already been done for you if you're not that type of thinker. If you're not the one who comes up with the prolific ideas already exist. You just need to back up those who already got the ideas. And I wish this would happen more often before they transition, because the biggest pain for me was that, let me finish my statement. The biggest pain for me was knowing he didn't get to see that, and he deserved that. If it was ever something in his mind that he wanted to see his characters in a movie, he deserved to see that in his lifetime. I think that all great comic book creators that want to see that of their characters deserve that. A show, a movie, something on that screen. It's important. It's the ultimate broadcast, the ultimate, to put it in some basic comic book terms that everybody will recognize because of the power of that character. It's the bat signal up in the sky, baby. You can't not see. Oh, it's casting up. Everybody see that. They might miss a comic book. They might miss a video game. They might even miss a show because they don't watch that channel, don't have that channel with it. But when something comes on that commercial and says, from the producers of such and blah, 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 comes a hero. Whether you go see it or not, you know about it. That big screen is the big screen. It really is. It really is. Which is why so much of that gets gate-kept on a whole nother conversation. Which is why it was such a fight to even get Black Panther produced all these years. Some of y'all know the history and ain't sleep at the wheel. Y'all know about the fact that Wesley Snipes wanted to do that. He wanted to do Black Panther before he got Blade. And there was even consideration of having Denzel Washington involved and all kind of people. So isn't that interesting that Denzel's going to be in the third one? You know, once they woke up and they made billions, they realized, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't have slept on this so long. What is meant to be going to be, though. And ONLI said it. He spoke about it at ONYXCON. He spoke about it many places, but I'm lucky and blessed, and universe blessed forever, that I can claim that he was at ONYXCON and he stood there in front of Bruno Gaston on mic and spoke about all of what we are seeing. He said, you're gonna see it happen, because they just the way it works, and this is what's not direct quoting, but basically what he said. You know, they allow you to, you know, plant the seeds, get the young growth of plant, maybe have a first harvest. They see your reaction in your community amongst your people to your harvest, your originally grown roots and everything, and they say, oh man, they really like that. That is now, you cannot deny there's a lot of people that love this. They watched us do our events for years. Like I said, his was first one and started in 1993. Around that same time, you had the first major black independent books. Brother Man, Dawood Anyabwile and his brothers, the Sims brothers. He changed his name later to Dawood Anyabwile, but he was originally Sims. From Philadelphia. Shout out Philly again. A lot of history in Philly, y'all. A lot of history in every city that's a major black city. Wherever we are, there's major history. But I'm just shouting out some of my towns. Much love to Philly forever. And you know how I feel about Atlanta. And what's on my head. Come on, Atlanta forever. LA always. It's just natural. Anyway. But Chicago's super important. Super important. Super prolific. And this man started it all right there in Chicago. And I keep saying all because I want to make it. I'm on a mission. I've been on a mission, but now, oh boy, y'all really ain't seen nothing yet. I ain't gonna bite my tongue at all. I'm gonna say it just like I mean it every time I speak on it. I'm gonna say the first culturally specific for the African diaspora pop arts convention. You see that? Then you cover everything. See, if you just say Comic-Con, some people, oh, it's just Comic. No, you don't know the cultures. Because at a Comic-Con, there's way more going on than just comics. You got people in cosplay. You got people who doing film. You got people who write books. You got people who deal with nutrition, at least at our conventions. We cover the whole thing. It's a real holistic experience. It's a family reunion. That's how our conventions are built. That's why we had the success that we have had and will have and are still having. Shout out Ekbach. Shout out Motor City Black Asia Comics Convention. My man Andre Batts up in Detroit. Lions, still hold your head high. I was with y'all all season. I'm still with you. I'm still going to get me a Lions cap. Congratulations, Washington. Hell of a quarterback. It is what it is. But real talk, it's about that, y'all. It's about paying homage. It's about never forgetting to shout out your people. It's about not forgetting who came before you. Or if you never knew, it would behoove you. Y'all know how I feel about that word. I love that word. It would behoove you to know. It's not to be ignored. It's not to be, don't make the, you know, and I respect him. Talk about another one from Chicago. Talk about another one. Lupe Fiasco. Shout out Lupe. Who got his name from an anime concept. You talk about being in the cultures. Plural, with a Z or with an S. I coined the phrase hashtag for the cultures. Lupe made one mistake in his career that I love to highlight because it's an example. And even himself, he apologized. So it's no, that's the difference. See, a real man gonna apologize when he wrong. He ain't gonna walk around like a fool being proud when he know he dead ass wrong. He's just gonna say, yo, man, I made a mistake. At the time, I didn't see this, I didn't see that. Now I see the light. Another phrase I often say in the ONYXCON situation, what we do here, research, realize, revise. You got a way of thinking, you find out it's dysfunctional. I thought it was functional, it's dysfunctional actually. Okay, I need to research. Oh, that's why it's dysfunctional. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Let me revise. Let me realize what I messed up and let me revise that. But he had the performance, the famous performance where It was an homage to hip hop greats that had come before him, people who were alive when he was not even born. And he fumbled over some lyrics with Tribe Called Quest, and it burned him severely, almost canceled him, as they say, because folk was like, whoa, 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 man, no, 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 no. Everybody loved Tribe. You can't do that. You can't disrespect one of the greatest hip hop groups in the history of what we call hip hop. You can't do that to hip hop music. Hip hop is more than just music, but specifically on the music, you cannot do that. And he had to bite his tongue because at first he was also, well, I was born in a day, I'm young and I ain't know all that, man. I knew Tupac and I knew this and that. Something about them ones that was born when Pac was most popular. It's like, it's amazing to me because it's almost like, do you understand? I was alive before Pac ever got a name with even Digital Underground. Like, you talking about Pac, I'm talking about Run DMC, the Fat Boys, LL Cool J, Kool Moe Dee, Big Daddy Kane, KRS-One, Public Enemy. And if you're all the way back, we can get into some ski names. Curtis Blow, the Furious Five, Sugar Hill Gang, on and on and on, man. It just, I discovered Sugar Hill Gang from one of my aunts. My dad had already told me a little bit, but she had the album, and I'll never forget going through her albums. I was like, oh, this is that thing I heard about. She's like, yeah, put that on. That was the first time in my life I heard a hip hop, a hippie to the hip hop in the back. I said, oh. And I was in South Georgia, in Albany, Georgia. Yeah. We take it back to other eras, people. Still waiting on this order, but yeah, we take it back to other eras. And that's the difference in being older. And it's like, when young folk, there's nothing worse than young folk that don't respect older people. Nothing worse. Because it's like, it's a sign of complete failure. You can't go no further than you know of what was before you. You have to. It's like the formula for life. You gotta know what happened before you were here to function. A lot of young folk don't trust not a bit of what that statement is, because with these phones and everything in their head, first of all, they think that the electricity that keeps the phone on is just gonna always be here, just like it's magic or something, and it's supposed to always be here, and nothing can happen for it to all go away. Ask people in LA dealing with the result of this fire how things can all saying about the greatness of what ONLI shared and his perspectives on where we were going and where we are in the Black Age, as we call it. And I will say that was a response to even name it the Black Age was a response to acknowledging that once Black creators were acknowledged for their creations, and once the mainstream did want to capitalize on all of the popularity of what we had created, is that we would see our representation. But in other ways, it would challenge our ability to keep an audience, because people would run to see whatever was happening in the mainstream and forget about everything we had built grassroots for ourselves. And until we respect that original, that grassroots, to let it then become the next mainstream of its own. Like, you don't have to stay independent to the extent that you don't have the finances to do something major. You don't have the resources to ever produce that big movie or do that bigger version of your comic or whatever it may be. All of that is part of the process of growth. And he was all for it. He was not somebody who was on, when he said independent, I feel like it was a reflection of keep that spirit of originality, of not corporatized creation, but of true originality, of true, you have an idea, it's going to speak to a certain audience, you speak to them first, and everybody else is invited. You can all come to the party, but we're going to do